the 20s. And that's where you're going to find Derrick White, just ahead of Trae Young, just ahead of Jamal Murray at 29 after the 2 defensive seasons we've had that we've seen from him. After the 3-point shooting run he's been on over the last 2 years and into the playoffs. I don't think he dominated in the playoffs, but him moving to point guard, him being a steady hand who could run some sets for them, and him being one of the best shot blockers at his position, one of the best defenders at his position, had such a ginormous glue effect on this championship team. And a lot of it's going to go beyond the stats. A lot of it's going to go beyond maybe even watching him as much as most people do. Watching him every day, this guy's as impactful as anyone in the league among role players. And if you want to call him the best role player in the NBA, I would have no qualms about it. So the shooting dips down. He's probably not a top 30 guy, but he's a guy who can do a lot with a few touches. We talked about that through the Olympic run. He's a guy that can defend at the highest level. And if you need him to, as we saw in different spots when guys were out, he can score at 20, 30 points off his own creation, off his shooting. So he just brings so much to the table. I think he's such an elite role guy that he needs to be in the top 30, at least coming off last year in the championship and the 2 seasons he just had.
I like him in the top 30. I have my first really strong opinion here. I think Tyrese Maxey is the best player on this list. At least next year, I think he will be. And
Okay.
so that's my first hot take. I would rather have him on a team than probably any of those guys. I mean, it's hard. I don't want to bet against Derrick White, but between Paul George and him, like thinking about 2 Sixers, like who scares me more from a Celtics perspective? Like it's Tyrese Maxey. I think he made a massive leap heading into this year, and he's probably due for another one. And in those playoffs,
Could he be an All-NBA guy next year?
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought that he struggled when Joel Embiid went down because for the first time he was the number one option and had all game planning against him and everything. But I think that's going to make him better in the long run, and he's talked about that. And I don't think that would happen again if he was in that position. It was really a kind of a learning curve type thing. But in the playoffs, when Embiid needed him, like he was massive. He had some big shots, he had some big performances, and obviously it wasn't enough. Like that team didn't get it done, but it only made you more optimistic about him. So it's tough. It's a lot of it is recency bias. Like De'Aaron Fox had his moments a year or two ago where I thought he was going to really be on the brink of something great. Obviously, Kyrie Irving, there's been moments of his career where he's been the guy, but just coming off the finals, I don't know that I would put Kyrie over some of the guys on this list, but we are getting to a more elite group. I would move Zion down because I think like the way that Porzingis got that injury bump, I think Zion needs it as well. He hasn't been able to be consistently on the court, and even this year, I think people forget like he wasn't able to be there in the end. So he's somebody that I just wouldn't be able to rely on. As good as he did have, I think he had a sneaky good season last year. Under the radar, wasn't really discussed. I almost feel like the NBA and the NBA media has kind of moved on from Zion. So it's like no matter what he does now, it's just kind of going under the radar. But yeah, I'd probably bump him down and I'd move Tyrese Maxey up. Those are my two strong opinions. I'd probably move Sabonis down too.
I love Sabonis.
I know.
To me, I think he's just such an engine. You look at the stats, you look at the weight he carries there in Sacramento, how elite all time of an offense he's made them. Probably stepped back a little bit last year, so that's fair. George, to me, the respect I give him is how many threes he can put up and how elite of a percentage he can maintain to that. I think that's so valuable along with wing size. I think he's so perfectly suited to be the third option there in Philly. That's a team we have to take a long look at when it comes to challengers to Boston. When you have 3 guys of that caliber in the top 30 here, because clearly Embiid is too. If those 3 guys are healthy, that team's going to be a load. There's no doubt about it. They have some depth questions. I'm actually seeing some of their people. I forget specifically what outlet. There was some debate in Philly circles. Should Yabusele start? Noah. That doesn't speak well to their depth. In my mind, but wow, the 3 players they have at the top there, if they can stay healthy, are pretty admirable. Love Bam. If you want to put him over Sabonis, I wouldn't mind that. The defense he brings is so transformative. And he said he wants to go get that DPOY. This could be the year he does it, in my mind, especially if there's some campaigning behind him. And he's obviously going to be carrying a heavy weight there in Miami on offense too. So we'll see if he can maintain both of those things. I'm so high on Paolo. I'll admit he has to take a leap this year. And he took another step last year, but efficiency-wise, it's tough in that offense. But I think he's going to have some better talent around him this year. He can be a top 25 guy, but it's going to take another leap from him on both ends of the court. And then Zion, the reason I have him so high still is when he's out there, when he's healthy, they've been a borderline contender. And that was more 2 years ago. Last year, he actually played a lot, and they weren't as consistent and effective. So if you want to take him a notch down off that, that's fair. But there's been times where he's playing at his best that his presence alone has made them a borderline contender with, a solid supporting cast. There's actually been quite a few Pelicans we've named on this list, and it's still baffling how they're so mediocre every year despite that talent. A lot of it is the injuries. A lot of it's the inconsistency of the lineups and all that. So I won't knock anyone who says Zion's not out there enough. He's not a top 30 player. But when he is out there, he's one of the guys who has just swung his team's fortunes so drastically. But this is going to be a big year for him because I think if it goes the same way it's gone the last couple of years, he could actually be out of there. And who knows who would even want to pick him up at that point, especially with the money he makes. So he's an interesting guy on this list. Lillard, too. Is he starting to trend down for real? The defense was a big problem for that team last year. He was definitely a top 20 guy late there in Portland. He could be out of the top 30 if it's similar to how it went last year for him. Hey, Bobby Manning here. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed this video, so subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS.